Good afternoon. My name is Dan Fishman. I'm the executive director of the People for Liberty. And one of the things that's really important to us as the People for Liberty is that when we become aware of groups of people working for liberty, that we call attention to the great work that we're doing. I had the good fortune, I was down at the convention in Florida, and I ran into the Ladies of Liberty Alliance. They are doing exceptional work addressing a real problem in the liberty movement, which frankly is gender based. And they're doing a good job of talking about issues, bringing more people in, finding different ways to add to the sum of who makes up People for Liberty. So I want to bring in two people who are affiliated with the Ladies of Liberty Alliance. Let me bring in Christina Herrin and Holly Jean Soto. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Dan.
So I'm just going to go around the clock. Christina, can you tell us a little bit about your path and how you came to be working for the Ladies of Liberty Alliance? I'm just going to start saying LOLA.
Yeah, you can say LOLA for short. So okay. I'm the LOLA US coordinator, so I help assist all of our LOLA US chapters across the country. And we're developing new chapters monthly. I guess we have interested parties, but I joined the Liberty Movement, I would say, in college. I was pretty much an independent through high school. And then when I started college, I didn't know much about policy or politics. And then I got introduced to Yale as a philosophy major, as many of the students for Rand Paul and Yale people were into philosophy. And it just clicked with me. It made sense. I was raised with the values of personal responsibility and individualism. And I think I kind of had an aha moment in college, and I'm really glad that I did. And after college, I went to work in Washington, D.C. I worked in the Liberty Movement for, I don't know, I guess I graduated in 2016. So I don't know, maybe almost 8 years now, I guess, in total. And when I finally moved back to Iowa, where I'm located now, I wanted to get more involved with the philosophical side. I work in policy a lot, and it kind of gets boring and you kind of question what you're doing, but being able to engage with real people who are interested, in joining the Liberty Movement is something that, LOLA can provide to me. And I love, working with LOLA because I think they do an awesome job. So.
Oh, I think you're...
Already it started. I told Christina my biography will be called Dan, You're Muted. Holly Jean, I think that's a great liberty story, Christina. Holly Jean, can you tell us your path to coming to work for LOLA?
Sure. So I first came across the ideas of liberty actually when I was taking my first economics course here in Orlando, Florida at Valencia College. At the time I had no idea what econ was. I really had no idea what to expect out of this course. And on top of that, it turns out my professor was a hardcore libertarian. And I had never heard of that word before, no idea what it meant, no idea what to expect. But this class really changed my life, and it really started my involvement in the Liberty Movement. I learned a lot about Hayek versus Keynes, watched John Stossel in the classroom, and for the first time I was challenged and learned about individual liberty, limited government, free markets, and my favorite was learning about the unintended consequences of government intervention in the economy, and how government can have the best intentions in setting rules and regulations, but these protections can do more harm than good because intentions do not equal results. So from there, I went on to pursue my economics degree in the Washington, D.C. area at George Mason University. And 6 months after that, after graduating, that's when I discovered LOLA. And I've been with LOLA for 4 years now, and grew from associate to manager and now director. But most importantly for me, it's really helped me understand the need for more women in the liberty movement and getting to work individually with women across the world and helping to equip them to spread the message of liberty has been life-changing for me.
Well, it feels like I paid you to make this segue because you're talking about it. And so tell me a little bit about LOLA itself. So I've got a slideshow, and well, you guys made a slideshow for me and I appreciate it. I don't care who goes first. What do you want to tell me about LOLA? And
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. So the Ladies of Liberty Alliance, or LOLA, is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. So we were originally established in 2009. We just celebrated our 12th birthday this month in July.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. And our whole mission is to educate and empower women in the liberty movement. So we really exist to address that shortage of women in the liberty movement. So we've found through research and through our own personal experience that libertarian women feel the most alone in their philosophy than any other. And this isn't really surprising, you know. And on top of that, this proves to be true not only in the United States, but in cities across the globe. So we've
pictures from around the world, and they're amazing.
Yes, definitely. We've actually had a lot of women reach out to us on Instagram, which is our most popular platform, in different countries, you know, throughout Africa, throughout Latin America, South Asia, who want to bring LOLA back home to their country. Whether it's because, you know, they've attended a libertarian conference and found that they are one of the few women in attendance, or have had experiences, you know, either not being taken seriously or being talked over, or want to make the liberty movement more women friendly. Overall, they're looking to start a LOLA chapter to be part of a strong community of like-minded women, to build their relationships. And the second part of that is to use their chapter as a place to spread the ideas of libertarian ideology to new women in their city who have not yet heard of these ideas. And another important thing to note is that these chapters are open to all women in all stages of life as well. And to give you an idea of where we are as well, I know you guys saw some of the chapter pictures in different cities across the globe. But when I first started LOLA 4 years ago, at that time, we were only in 2 countries, the US and Israel. And we're so happy that today LOLA chapters are currently in over 23 countries, with over 65 chapters reaching over 2,500 women. And we're constantly growing every month. Like I mentioned before, we get a lot of people who reach out to us on Instagram wanting to make sure that a chapter starts back home in their city. And just this year, we've been able to launch different chapters in places like Michigan, Central New York, Brazil, Guatemala, Canada, and a most recent one in Mexico. And Christina can also share about what LOLA events look like.
Sure. And yeah, we do almost have a chapter, or it's close to being started in New Hampshire. So that's kind of exciting. And like Holly mentioned, we're really diverse. I mean, we're in different countries, and obviously that means women are fighting for different issues and discussing different, policies and different things happening around them. And here in the United States, we have a lot more freedom that we can exercise than other women elsewhere. So I think it is really interesting to look at what some of the other women are doing. In Uruguay, we had women, speak to parliament in their country. And I think it was Brazil that had some women that went forward with getting elected into public office, which is just incredible. Here in the United States, we've had, gun range events. So, supporting women's Second Amendment and the ability for them to have the right to choose how to protect themselves. We've had brewery tours in Nashville. We've had networking events in Washington, D.C. Some of the women have attended different protests or, made their voices heard in different capacities in that way. So I think that a LOLA event can look different for everyone. We also have, LOLA Book Club, and we have resources online for women that want to, continue to educate themselves and the women around them. We have an Ayn Rand Book Club, Ayn Rand Book Club in Brazil. And, they're reading Atlas Shrugged and discussing those chapters. So it can be, very philosophical. Otherwise, women are, fighting real world issues in their countries. So I think that LOLA can look different for every chapter. And we're definitely excited about the COVID lockdowns, ending, or hopefully, coming to an end for almost everyone. And it'll definitely give a new opportunity for women to be able to engage in a way that we couldn't for almost a whole year, being separated and isolated from each other. So I think it's good future we have looking towards a good future.
So it's great. Your growth is astonishing. And I would imagine that in that process, you have figured out ways to appeal to women who want to be part of the liberty movement, but haven't felt like that they're welcome beforehand. And so I wonder if you guys could identify some tactics, some of the things that, the general liberty movement is doing wrong that necessitated a group like yours, because I completely agree. The dynamics are broken at this point in time.
Well, go ahead, Holly.
Good, Christina, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think as a woman, it's a little difficult because sometimes people like to specifically say these are women's issues. You've got this dichotomy of the right and the left, and then this little tiny, liberty movement in the center. And a lot of the issues, they try to, categorize them as women's issues. And I think at LOLA, I like to view it as all issues are women's issues, and we can just explain them and discuss them possibly in different ways that make it more digestible to women. So I think there's a lot of women out there who, would be really interested in joining the liberty movement. I just don't know that we're discussing some of the issues in the right way that is relatable to them or, interesting to them. So I think that's something at LOLA, we're able to do that in a way, and we're able to connect with women. I mean, clearly we have, right? But I think we're going to continue that success, and it just draws more women in and almost gives them, I don't want to use the term, but a safe space to talk about those ideologies and those philosophies that elsewhere you might be looked at. If you don't agree with mainstream media, you're viewed as evil or a bigot. And I think that LOLA creates this area where you can come in and talk about those ideas and not be judged for it. So I think that that's really important.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, so one of our slogans is that women are the best ambassadors for liberty. And now when we say this, it comes from the realization that we all have to do a better job at introducing these ideas to new people. We need more people combating the ideas of socialism with the principles of individual liberty, limited government, and free markets. We really need less arguments and name calling and sides and division, and more leaders who can champion these ideas through empathy, because patience and empathy are key to presenting the ideas of liberty effectively. And research has shown us as well that libertarian women are much more empathetic than libertarian men. And that's not to say, this is good or a bad thing. These are just the facts. And when we have more voices of empathy, of compassion and understanding in the liberty movement, we can bring in new people. We can bring in new women, men, liberals, independents, etc. to these ideas. And this is exactly what LOLA leaders and members are doing. We believe in bringing in more people, not just women, into the liberty movement.
Using the word empathy, I think, is a critical distinction, because a lot of people think they should be sympathetic, when in fact being empathetic is a much more important thing, to actually be able to understand somebody else's experience and then comment on them. And I agree with you that that is a trait that tends to be lacking in the liberty movement right now.
Yeah.
Now, I loved, Christina, what you said about the idea that all issues are actually women's issue, and comparably the idea that women's issues are all liberty issues. There's not that those things are both true. What are some of the examples of places where people tend to think, oh, that's not really a liberty issue, that's just a women's issue, and education is helpful?
Well, I think when you look at different events taking place across the globe too, it's important for us not to just limit ourselves to, the women's issues, whatever topic that might be. We go over everything and anything. We think it's important to introduce the ideas of liberty to everyone, but not only that, use events to pull in new women as well, and not just hit, the jargon that sometimes we can use, and not just talk about, not using the word necessarily libertarianism or capitalism, these words that just will prevent people from getting introduced.
Yeah, they're divisive. I agree with you. I think they're divisive. One of the things that I always think about is that bodily autonomy is clearly a liberty issue for everybody. And some people seem to think that it's only a women's issue. But if they realize that it's a liberty issue and not gender specific, then I think, that's how we can bring a lot of people in. And having liberty-minded folk being able to talk about it that way makes us a lot more accessible. let me ask you a little bit about something I'm not sure whether or not you guys are doing. Do you have an educational component where you're able to say members of LOLA are available to educate you on how to look at your messaging, make it more compatible, gender neutral, something like that? Is that something you guys are doing or thinking about doing?
So we at LOLA, we have 3 different programs that we run. The first is our LOLA Social Chapter program, which is the one that we went over. And our most popular one, we also have a LOLA Speakers Bureau to show that there are women who are able to speak on the ideas of liberty. And the third is our leadership training. Now, our leadership training and the whole education part that you're talking about at the moment is done through the chapters. You know, they really are the ones that get to look at, you know, the local issues in their area, because what's going on in Africa is different than what's going on in, you know, Latin America or the US. And really using those opportunities to introduce these ideas through their events.
Awesome. Hey, Christina, it looked like you had something else to say about sort of the educational component of what you guys are doing, because I know you guys do trainings.
No, I was just going to mention our Speakers Bureau. I think that's a really good resource, and Holly kind of hit our 3 programs. But I'd say our Speakers Bureau gives opportunity to really educate women, and we have a lot of voices on, you know, there that are accessible and able to discuss issues. And we did a lot of Instagram lives with women, and have been able to, you know, really promote the voices of liberty from a women's, you know, lens and perspective. So.
And we also on our Instagram as well are trying to pull in, you know, new audiences to these ideas as well. I think on one of the sides that we've shared, we've hit a variety of different topics, you know, capitalism is a misnomer, sexism in the Olympics, different women who helped form these ideas. So we're really trying to use our social media platforms to introduce these ideas in a very beginner level so that anyone can understand.
So you get a very topical thing, sexism in the Olympics. It seems like it's getting traction now after, I don't know, you know, 60 years, that there clearly is a difference in uniform design and what's required. And there actually was a team that were they suspended for wanting to wear their own uniforms? I'm thinking of the Norwegian team here who didn't want to play beach volleyball in bikinis. I
believe they were fined.
Fined.
Yeah.
That seems pretty crazy to me. I mean, is that sort of thing, you know, there must be a million cases of that sort of issue that are just clear-cut liberty issues for women in terms of dress, uniform requirements, stuff like that. Is that something that you guys encounter a lot?
I think on issues like this too, there's obviously a variety of different perspectives on issues of sexism in the Olympics. I think that, you know, it's a matter of, you know, are we going to leave participants the freedom to decide and choose for themselves the uniforms, or, you know, should they just be allowed to opt out? I think it's, you know, everyone is going to have their different opinion on something like this. But I think, like you said, it's important to highlight that individual liberty and giving people the option to choose.
And our super producer behind the scenes, Holly Ward, mentioned that Pink paid all of the fines for the dress code violation. Although, of course, that doesn't actually fix the dress code.
No.
It just addresses the fine, which is a fascinating thing, because there are a lot of other examples of gender-specific discrimination. And I mean, I feel embarrassed to be saying it because, of course, you guys are the experts on this. Are there any top issues that Ladies of Liberty find new members coming in or saying, you know, this is one of the ways that I feel like I'm specifically having my liberty limited?
Well, I would just say when I've talked to women, I think the COVID-19 virus and then the mask mandates and the lockdowns and the vaccine and the discussion now of potential healthcare vaccine passports. I mean, that's an issue for everyone, but I think women and parents being able to choose, having the freedom to choose their own healthcare decisions, I think that that's like the most innate piece is healthcare is your lifeline. So I think talking with some women, that's been an issue. I know also we've had some women and men, I'm sure, as parents, but women that we talked to regarding school choice and looking at other options than the public school option, which, you know, a lot of that was virtual and now is requiring masks for some students, and parents are looking at other options. And so I think just down to the fundamentals of being able to have the freedom to choose, you know, these most personal things for yourself is, you know, innate to libertarianism. And I think a lot of women who maybe didn't identify with the liberty movement before, now after this COVID-19 pandemic maybe can, and I hope that we're able to kind of monopolize on that and, you know, meet with some of those women and be able to plant the seeds of liberty, if you will, by giving them, you know, an inkling to what, you know, the foundation of libertarianism is. So,
you know, one of the fascinating things about it is, you talked about COVID and the impact. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of COVID on employment rates and how it affected men and women differently in terms of their representation in the marketplace? Like I recall seeing a thing that during COVID, more women stopped working than men because there's sort of a bias towards if somebody has to stay home and be a caregiver, or you know, or if there's a job lost or something like that, the default is that men are more highly, more traditionally seen in the caretaking, not the caretaking, the work, and women are more traditionally seen in the caretaking environment. And for me, that was one of the most striking examples of what happened during COVID. It's obviously not true, right? Men can be caretakers. Women can be job earners, but that societal perception had a big impact. It was represented in the numbers during COVID. And I'm thinking that, you know, that's one of the examples of how COVID showed this real disparity in terms of liberty, in terms of what people are allowed to do. What about, you know, knock on wood here, maybe we're coming out of it. I'm a little worried about some of the announcements I saw today from the federal government, and Joe Biden saying that he's smarter than me. But as we move into, you know, hopefully a more open world, doing more in-person events, what sort of things is LOLA looking forward to getting back to? What are the actions and activities that, you know, really work much better in person than online?
Well, one of our most recent things that we're looking forward to, which is going to be in person, that we're really excited about, is our leadership retreat. So we have an annual leadership retreat for LOLA's most active chapter leaders across the globe. And it's really a time to come together for these ladies to finally meet in person, you know, really connect with what they're doing in different parts of the world and receive, you know, the training that they need to bring back home and to make their chapter more effective, whether it's, you know, media training, learning how to write an op-ed, communications, and just networking more in the DC area. It's going to be held in Washington, DC this year.
Awesome. So I'm excited that, you know, you guys are going to get that opportunity, getting people together. Now, if people want to learn more about LOLA, we've got the website on the bottom scrolling past. Where would you say are the places to go? Go to the website and then look at what?
Sure. If you want to stay up to date on all things LOLA, like I mentioned before, our most popular social media platform is our Instagram account. You can follow us there at Ladies of Liberty. And I would also encourage you to sign up for our newsletter, and you can do this on our website, ladiesofliberty.org.
Now, if somebody wanted to get involved and start their own chapter, do you provide help with people in sort of starting their own chapter, getting things going?
Yes, we do. So a lot of people reach out to us either on Instagram or directly from our website, because we do have our emails available there on our Meet the Team page. And we also have a chapters page on our website as well, where you can see all the cities that we're located in, see if you're interested in joining one in your area. And if there's not one in your area, you can go ahead and start one. And we go ahead and do our chapter startup call with you, walk you through the process, and give you the resources that you need as well.
Oh, so that's a huge resource. Is it something that, I mean, I guess if there's not a local chapter around you, your best option is to try to start one up, right? Find the other people who are there. Do you have advice for people about how to find other people to start a chapter with?
Yeah, it really looks different depending on, the part of the world that you're in, but we do our best to really target like-minded organizations around you. Sometimes in, different places in the world, it's rare to find. And whereas with other parts, it's really easy to find and easy to bring in and network with other like-minded women. So it really depends on the individual, depends on the location, of course, but we do provide resources to make that process a little easier.
So I'm guessing that, you guys are having this success because you found this niche that isn't addressed by other liberty organizations, because there certainly are other liberty organizations. I happen to represent one. But this specific focus is clearly ringing a bell. It's resonating. As people come in and as they start seeing it, what do you think is the gain that people see most immediately out of joining a social chapter or starting a social chapter?
Yeah, I think, like you said, there are a lot of great organizations out there that do an awesome job with promoting the ideas of liberty. And we're friends with and partners with a variety of conservative and libertarian organizations. But what really makes us different from the rest is specifically addressing that gender gap that we talked about, and specifically focusing on libertarian women. And we're not limited to just college students or young professionals as well. We're open to women in all stages of life.
Awesome. So, Christina, you talked a little bit about the Speakers Bureau. Tell me, who are some of the superstars in the Speakers Bureau? If I were going to ask for a speaker right now, who would be the celebritarian that would be at the top of the list?
Oh, my mind's going blank. Holly, can you name?
Alvarez, I would say.
Yeah,
she's one of our newest ones. Antonella Marty.
Yep.
And we're working on getting others as well. There's a lot of good ones there.
I have to say, Gloria Alvarez, her following is phenomenal. I started LPTV for the Libertarian Party, and still to this day, the largest broadcast that they've ever had was the one in which they had Gloria Alvarez on.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
She's just amazing. I saw in your slideshow, Catherine Bernard was at the Atlanta group. Do you know if is she in your Speakers Bureau? She is one of I think the most important legal mind right now because of her 2 jury nullification wins in Atlanta. I
would have to check, honestly.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'm looking through it now. I also see Catherine Mangu Ward is obviously the editor-in-chief at Reason. She's a phenomenal speaker as well. So that's probably something that was worthwhile for people to do too. If they're looking for education, they could go to your Speakers Bureau, search through, find the people who are there, and contact you about bringing a speaker in to talk on some issues.
Definitely. We also have others like Maguette Wade there, and Jennifer Grossman, and plenty of others.
Awesome. So what do you guys see your impact being like? What people tend to talk about things in an end game. Is your end game just to grow the Ladies of Liberty into the largest possible group, or is there a bigger goal than that?
So I would answer that question by saying we're definitely not just about numbers. Like I've said before, I've heard so many, different stories, personal stories from women all across the globe, and hearing their experiences and background in the liberty movement. And while we are, very proud of the growth that we've had internationally, We are more concerned about, you know, taking care of the individual and making sure that these women have a space in the liberty movement, making sure that they have the opportunity to learn and grow, and also learn how to bring new people into these ideas as well.
So that's a great thing. Is obviously if you increase membership, you increase people in the ideas, you have a concept that it's going to grow liberty. And, you know, in the United States, one of the ways that we can do that is at the legislative level. Are there any specific things that Ladies of Liberty does to look at either legislation, impact legislation, talk to people about legislation, talk in the group about legislation? Is that something that you guys focus on?
So we don't specifically focus on that. We really leave it up to the chapter leaders to decide what sort of you know, topic or event or discussion to focus on, since everywhere, you know, there's different things going on everywhere. But I will say that, for example, in one of our largest chapters in LOLA, Brazil, Christina kind of hit it before, but they've had success doing a variety of things, you know, whether it's self-defense classes to protect themselves in rough parts of Brazil. You know, a lot of women can't just openly walk around with their cell phones there, or hosting public policy discussions, or getting more women involved in politics as well. They've actually had success in 6 members of their LOLA chapters who have won city council elections.
Wow.
Under Brazil's Libertarian Party there as well.
That's amazing. What is the, you know, you talk about, you know, that they've had these political successes, and here, you know, we're having sort of the social chapters. What sort of action do you think, at least here in the United States, some of the local chapters can be working towards? Not necessarily what they're doing right now, but if we were to say, you know, in a year from now, we'd hope that this thing had happened. What would be something you think would hope that they'd been involved in?
Probably getting more women involved.
All right.
In the political party altogether, yes.
Now, do you view LOLA mainly as a pipeline, sort of finding women, getting them accustomed to the liberty movement, and then moving into other liberty organizations, such as either a local party or, you know, maybe an activism group or something like that?
So I would say it would more so be to create that community of like-minded women. We've found a lot of times women who approach us who feel like they're alone in the liberty movement, or who have unfortunately in the past faced sexual abuse in the liberty movement and are turned off to it and really have no other place to go. And I think overall, you know, there are different obstacles that keep women from remaining in or coming into the liberty movement. But LOLA is here to help them with that and to make sure that they do have that space in the liberty movement.
So let's touch on this idea of, you know, facing sexual abuse in the liberty movement. I know that I myself have witnessed men touching women just because they're going to touch them. It's things that they wouldn't do to other men. And it seems like there's an opportunity for a lot of education in the liberty movement about that sort of thing. Does assembling women who have had this similar experience make it easier to educate and combat that problem?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, when talking about the shortage of women in liberty movement, it's important to understand the background and the experiences of individual women who are involved. You know, we've been approached by different women with different cases of sexual abuse in the liberty movement, whether it's in the workplace or attending a conference, etc. And they've shared their story with us that the liberty movement is no longer a place where they feel safe or comfortable, and that they no longer want to be a part of it. And honestly, we can't expect women to grow, and we can't expect them to spread the message of liberty in a place they don't feel safe. So these women have shared that if it wasn't for the community of like-minded women in LOLA, they would have nowhere to turn to.
So I'm glad that you were talking about this, because I do think that it is a shameful part of the liberty movement that there's sort of been on a large scale, feigned ignorance of the fact that there is a problem, because I think it's evident that there is a problem, and it should be evident to most people. what do you think are some of the things that people in the liberty movement can do? Aside from, I'm very grateful to Lola for assembling a safe place for people. What can people like me do in the liberty movement to make it a more welcoming community, to combat some of these problems?
Well, I think if you see something, say something. I think for especially the younger generations coming up, and it doesn't have to just be in the liberty movement, but if you see something wrong or know something going on, I know it can be very hard because sometimes there's people in power or in higher roles than you are in the liberty movement potentially, and you don't want to go against that. But I think if you see something or know that something's wrong, you should say it. And it's kind of fundamental to the liberty movement and ideas of liberty is that personal responsibility and the kind of non-aggression principle. We really shouldn't be aggressing on others in any regard. And so I think that it's really upsetting that it's coming from the liberty movement, because it should be the absolute opposite, I would think, if we truly believe in those principles. So I think it's very difficult, but I think being able to say something, if you see something, would be the first thing to do, and stand up for what's right. I think it's very important.
I love the way you said that, because I don't see how anybody in the liberty movement can think that it's okay to touch another person without their consent.
Yeah.
And, there are some things that we do that, sometimes we say, okay, that I'm going to put out my hand to see if somebody's going to offer to shake their hand. We expect consent for that sort of thing. On the other hand, it's usually pretty apparent, I don't know this person well enough to hug them, or I don't know this person, if I could use the president's example, I don't know this person well enough to sniff their hair, or other things that unfortunately we see at the highest level, people saying, oh, that's okay. And when we see Democrats making excuses for President Biden's behavior, or Republicans making excuses for former President Trump's behavior, doesn't that undermine the basic idea of a consent culture? And so one of the things, so People for Liberty, we're pushing this hashtag of consent culture, the idea that there should be complete consent, complete informed consent all the time, with the idea that it makes sense to people regarding their bodies immediately, but subversively, that it's actually a much larger liberty issue, because people also need consent to take things from you. Mm-hmm. And I recognize I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm wondering if you guys have sort of ways of talking to people about consent requirements that you found particularly effective, because whatever we've been doing for the last 50 years clearly hasn't really made a huge impact.
I mean, we did post on social media, we have in the past, and we have taken polls from women, and we obviously have supported, consent culture throughout our, on social media and throughout Lola's time. And, when events do happen, Lola, is obviously here with open arms and wants to hear people's stories and allow them to feel comfortable to be a part of this, liberty movement without feeling threatened in any way. Because again, like we mentioned, that's just the complete opposite of what libertarianism stands for. And, we have taken polls and gotten stories from women, and the numbers are, shocking. It's very upsetting, and it's shocking how many women, whether it's, a minor issue or a very, very, all issues are serious, but a very, very serious issue, have shared stories with us. And, I think it's just something that we really need to be better at addressing as a society. And I don't know when that time will be, but I think we need to address it.
How do I help address it? What can I do to spread the message better? Because I believe you guys have the people who can tell the story of it effectively. How do I help you get that out there?
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of ways for anyone to help, really. First one is through donations, supporting Lola directly. Another way is helping reach out with anyone you think might be interested in starting a chapter, so that we can get, more people involved in your local city as well.
Let's talk about the importance of donations for you guys, because, we always say money is the mother's milk of politics and data its daily bread. Money makes a big difference for what you guys are able to do and how you're able to amplify your message, right?
Correct. Yes.
So I see that Helpful Holly has posted ladiesofliberty.org/one-time. What does the /one-time take me to?
So we'll take you directly to our donation page. So we do have 2 different ways to donate. People can choose to donate on a monthly basis, or this one-time link shown here on the screen is to donate for one time.
So tell me what would happen right now if somebody can. You guys are a 501c4?
C3.
C3. So you're in education. So you could take $1 million donation right now. Somebody gives you guys $1 million. What happens with it?
So, like I mentioned, the biggest program that LOLA runs is our LOLA Social Chapter program. So this would be the most, this would be where the majority of it would go to these women who are educating new women in the liberty movement, giving them the resources that they need to further their leadership, to further their training, and to train their members as well, and learning how to pull in new women in their respective city as well.
Got you. So we get the money in. We've talked what LOLA have done. We've talked about, your guys' success stories so far. A year from now, success looks like a much bigger organization. Do you have any yearly targets, things where you'd like to be? 2024, obviously.
Oh, no, we froze.
Did I freeze?
I'm able to still see. Okay. Yes, I believe you're asking about, sorry, can you repeat it?
So do you have any yearly goals going out? Like what you would like to be at, 2022, 2024 is obviously a presidential election year, and, numbers and being counted and all that stuff is going to be a big deal. So if you guys are doing all that stuff, any goals that you say, okay, this is where we'd like to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years?
Yes, definitely. I would say definitely advancing in the chapters that we have worldwide. We are targeting specifically Europe for next year. That has been a little bit of a challenge for us. Like I said, we're currently present in Africa, Latin America, and South Asia. So hitting Europe would be really great for us, and also launching more chapters in the US, because we've seen a lot of international growth, but really getting, chapters started here right in the States.
What about, so what are some of the difficulties in getting launched in Europe? Is it cultural? Is it language, financial?
Personally, from what I've seen, it's a matter of, getting connected with the right person and with someone who has the time to be a chapter leader as well. Gotcha.
So let's coming up on toward the end of the interview. What are some things, what didn't I cover? What are some of the things that you guys are interested in having people know about your organization, why people should get involved, and then tell us sort of the basic place of where to get involved?
Yeah. Go ahead, Christina.
I was just going to say, I think you mentioned why, but I think everyone has to find their why. And I think it might be different for everyone, but especially after this COVID-19 lockdown, mask mandate, possible vaccine mandate situation, where in some states in the United States of America, you couldn't have your family over for Thanksgiving. I think people kind of hit a tipping point, a lot of people. And unfortunately, I think a lot of those people went to the 2 major political parties, and there's this liberty movement and this philosophical ideology that also resonates with the idea of being fed up with the federal government being in your business. And unfortunately, this dichotomy between the right and the left has attracted a lot of those people to fight each other and be against each other. And we, want to remind people that, the liberty movement is here and is, an awesome option instead of those 2 political parties. And so just looking toward the liberty movement as, a resource and growing it. Like Holly said, I'd love to have 1 chapter in all 50 states at least. and then continue to make have our chapters be more active, having more events, more educational events, and more speakers, discussing ideas of liberty, because really planting those seeds of liberty, and each person we bring in to the liberty movement will share that with their friends and family. And we just want to continue that growth for the future generations of LOLA and, the United States, and I guess the world, since we're international. But
that's great. And that's a very noble goal. I'm very grateful for both of you being here. ladiesoflibertyalliance.org. It's a group that's really doing a good job right now of pushing the idea that liberty has to be more inclusive and more welcoming, and finding people who want to have liberty conversations, but have felt that they are alone. They don't have a place to do it. Ladies of Liberty Alliance is providing that place. And so I would encourage you to share this broadcast and to share the LOLA website with everybody that you can, because it's important. It's important to bring people into the liberty movement. It's important for people to understand that the liberty movement is composed of people like them. So, Holly, Christina, any last words you guys want to say?
Thanks so much for having us on, Dan.
Absolutely, our pleasure. So my name is Dan Fishman. I am the executive director of the People for Liberty. We do this Liberty Lunch broadcast at least once a week. Next week, August 3rd, we will have on Ashley Baker from the Committee of Justice, who is an expert on antitrust law, and we'll be talking about the liberty impacts of Congress trying to restrict big tech with antitrust laws. For those of you who don't know the history of it, there have been several huge antitrust cases in the past: Standard Oil, AT&T, Microsoft, and now the government says it wants to restrict Facebook and Twitter and control them because of antitrust things. Is that an imposition on your personal liberty? Tune in August 3rd at 1 p.m. to find out. My name is Dan Fishman. I'm the executive director of People for Liberty, and thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoy the show. Remember, if you want to find out more about the Ladies for Liberty Alliance, go to ladiesforliberty.org. Thank you.